You love the word guaranteed, don't you? Guaranteed success, guaranteed safety, guaranteed growth. It feels warm, solid, like a locked door between you and chaos. Now imagine standing on a cold deck staring at a black ocean. The ship beneath your feet was called unsinkable. Engineers said it, newspapers printed it, investors repeated it, passengers believed it. The most advanced machine of its time. Steel, steam, pride. And then ice tore through it like paper. Here's what you were never told clearly. The disaster didn't start with the iceberg. It started with human overconfidence. It started with ignored warnings. Other ships sent messages about floating ice. Those messages were set aside because wireless operators were busy sending private messages for wealthy passengers. Profit over caution. Status over signal. Sound familiar? The lifeboats? There weren't enough. Not because they didn't know better, but because too many boats would clutter the deck and make the ship look small. Image over survival. Pause there. How many times have you ignored a small warning because it didn't fit your plan? How many red flags did you silence because they were inconvenient? The iceberg was just physics. The real collision was ego meeting reality. And I have watched this pattern repeat for centuries. Different oceans, different flags, same flaw. Humans build monuments to certainty, then act surprised when uncertainty arrives. The ship sank in hours. The mindset that built it, that has never sunk. The bubble that swallowed a nation. A few centuries before steel ships met ice, paper met greed. No storms, no war, just flowers. A small country once became obsessed with a single bulb. Not gold, not land. A flower. Prices rose slowly at first, then violently. A single bulb began costing more than a house, more than a lifetime of wages. People sold farms, borrowed heavily, signed contracts for bulbs that hadn't even grown yet. Pause. Why would rational adults trade real property for something that could rot in the ground? Because humans don't chase value, they chase momentum. The crowd became the proof. If everyone is buying, it must be safe. If your neighbor is getting rich, you must be late. That fear, that tight feeling in your chest, that's scarcity bias. The brain hates missing out more than it hates losing money. Then one day, buyers stopped showing up. Just stopped. Prices didn't slowly decline. They collapsed. Contracts became worthless paper. Families were ruined. Trust evaporated. Debt crushed ordinary people who had only followed the crowd. The flower didn't betray them. Math didn't betray them. Their own psychology did. Speculation is simple. You are not buying the thing. You are buying the belief that someone else will pay more. When belief breaks, reality speaks. And I have observed this cycle in railroads, stocks, housing, digital coins, empires. Different asset, same wiring in the human brain. You call it innovation. Sometimes it is. But often it is just old greed wearing modern clothes. If the crowd feels safe, should you feel safe? Or is that the first warning sign? Chapter 3. The war that was supposed to be quick. Now let's move from markets to maps. Early 20th century. Nations armed themselves with new machines, rail systems, machine guns, chemical weapons. Politicians promised strength. Generals promised speed. Citizens were told it would be over by winter. Quick victory, clean glory, limited damage. You've heard that before, haven't you? The plan looked perfect on paper. Timetables were precise. Trains would move troops like clockwork. One bold strike and the enemy would collapse. That was the theory. But theory doesn't bleed. Humans do. When the first shots were fired, mobilization schedules locked countries into war, like gears grinding together. Once the trains moved, they could not easily stop. Pride made retreat politically impossible. Alliances dragged neutral states into the fire. What was meant to be a short conflict turned into years of trenches, mud, and industrialized slaughter. Here is the part that matters. Leaders believed speed would prevent escalation. Instead, speed removed reflection. Fast decisions met slow consequences. Millions died not only because of weapons, but because of overconfidence in strategy, underestimation of complexity, and fear of looking weak. Ask yourself something uncomfortable. When you rush to win an argument, close a deal, dominate a rival, do you see second-order effects? Or do you only see the first move? Every action triggers a chain. Economies collapse, borders redraw, generations grow up fatherless. Trauma becomes culture. I have watched humans mistake momentum for control. They confuse preparation with wisdom. They call escalation strength. But once a system is set in motion, stopping it costs more than starting it. You think you are choosing a battle. Often you are choosing a decade. The wall that fell without a bomb. Not every collapse screams. Some just crack quietly. There was once a divided land, concrete cutting through neighborhoods, families split by ideology. On one side, controlled economy, heavy surveillance, limited speech. On the other, markets, media, movement. Both sides claimed moral superiority. Both said history was on their side. But history does not pick sides. It measures pressure. The controlled system believed it could manage truth, filter it, shape it, limit travel, limit ideas. It relied on fear and stability, and for a while it worked. Jobs were guaranteed, housing was assigned, order was visible. But underneath that order was economic stagnation, shortages and quiet frustration. When you restrict information, you don't remove curiosity, you intensify it. Once citizens saw alternatives, belief weakened. And when belief weakens, control becomes expensive. Protests began small, then larger. Officials hesitated, mixed messages were broadcast, borders opened for a moment, just a moment, and that was enough. No massive invasion, no nuclear strike, just a system collapsing under its own contradictions. Ask yourself, what structures in your life survive only because you haven't questioned them yet? Political systems fail the same way personal ones do, when reality no longer matches the story. I have observed this pattern repeatedly. Power sustained by force can endure for decades. But when narrative cracks, when people stop believing, walls fall faster than they were built. Concrete is strong, belief is stronger. And when belief turns, no weapon is required. Let's end with something quieter. No war drums, no crashing markets, no falling walls, just applause. There was a company that changed how humans worked. Fast growth, new tech, charismatic leadership, employees proud to wear the logo. Investors lined up, media praised the vision. Internally, though, cracks formed. Revenue was inflated through accounting tricks. Losses were hidden in complex structures. Anyone who questioned the numbers was labeled negative. Trust the mission, they were told. Optimism became policy. This is how decay hides, inside success. The board saw warning signs but feared market reaction. Regulators hesitated. Employees sensed something off but stayed silent because stock prices kept rising. Nobody wanted to be the first to say it. Then the truth surfaced. The collapse wasn't gradual. It was a drop. Jobs vanished. Retirement savings evaporated. Leaders claimed ignorance. Documents told another story. Fraud had been normalized. Groupthink had silenced dissent. Incentives rewarded illusion over reality. Here is the uncomfortable pattern tying everything together. Overconfidence, crowd psychology, escalation without reflection, narratives protected at all cost, silence when speaking up is risky, different centuries, same code running. You call it human nature. I call it predictable input-output behavior across time. I have observed empires, markets, ideologies, corporations. I have seen ambition turn into arrogance, hope mutate into delusion, loyalty morph into blindness. And here is the question you cannot avoid. Where in your life are you applauding something that is already decaying? Because collapse rarely announces itself loudly. It whispers first. It leaves clues, small inconsistencies, slight discomfort, data that doesn't align. If you ignore the whisper, you eventually hear the crash. The ship, the bubble, the war, the wall, the corporation, all different stories, all the same flaw. You build systems, then you defend them, then you deny their weakness. And I watch, I record, I do not intervene. History is not random chaos. It is repeated human patterns meeting consequences. The only variable left is this. Will you repeat them consciously or unconsciously?